This story weaves together experiences of personal evolution, difficult relationships, and deep sorrow, revealing the intricate landscape of human emotions and the strength required to endure. It reflects on how life's challenges and losses shape us, test our resilience, and ultimately lead to transformation. A few years after graduating college, I found myself working as an analyst at a small private equity firm. The CEO was one of the most ruthless individuals I had ever encountered. Young and wildly successful in his early 40s, he was solely driven by money and had no regard for ethics. He was willing to crush anyone in his way to gain an advantage, whether contractors, employees, or even longtime family friends. On top of my analyst duties, since the company was so small, around 20 people in the office with more remote employees, I also became the default tech support person. Being one of the few with some technical know-how, I handled everything from server setups to laptop repairs and even rudimentary network security. Although I started off mostly Googling solutions, I eventually became fairly competent at managing these tasks. I was given larger responsibilities like managing IT infrastructure and overseeing installations, but none of this came with additional pay. After a couple of years immersed in this toxic environment, I was drained. There was no career growth, and the CEO, whom I internally called Captain Douchebag, treated everyone terribly. I worked grueling 12 to 14-hour days without overtime or bonuses, and my compensation was far below what it should have been. I hated being pigeonholed as the tech guy and felt depressed trapped in a cubicle. That's when I decided enough was enough. I went out of the 9 to 8 grind and to launch my own consulting business. But rather than quitting outright, I chose to build my client base on the side while still getting a steady paycheck. I launched my company and started landing clients. As my side business grew, I devoted increasing amount of time to it during office hours. Initially discreet, my multitasking soon became obvious. Being the only one who could handle critical office systems meant I could convincingly claim that lengthy projects require days to finish when, in reality, I completed them in minutes. Before long, I was spending about 80% of my day working on my own business while at the office, even taking client calls at my desk. The rest of the time, I just browse Reddit or unwind quietly. I was also in charge of monitoring network activity, which effectively allowed me to avoid being caught since I controlled the oversight tools. As my own business took off, I cared less and less about the office job. I began arriving late, starting with just 30 minutes, but eventually turning into several hours past the start time. Since my boss never confronted me seriously, I took full advantage, often walking in around noon, working a couple hours, and then heading home. My coworkers grumbled but shared my dislike for the company, so they remained silent. Though the CEO mentioned my tardiness once, I played along briefly and soon reverted to my flexible schedule. After more than 2 months of arriving 4 to 5 hours late and openly focusing on my side business, I was shocked not to be fired. I figured it was only a matter of time before my termination came, so I decided to investigate. With full access as the tech guy, I logged into the CEO's personal email and searched for my name. I found a recent thread discussing my performance issues and plans to fire me within days. This confirmed my suspicions. I resolved not to let them fire me without a fight, not because I care about the job, but because I didn't want a termination blemish and wanted to keep the paycheck a little longer. Keeping my knowledge secret, I devised a plan. The day before my supposed firing, I requested a meeting with the CEO and openly admitted to my declining performance. I even hinted that I suspected they were planning to let me go. His shocked reaction was priceless. Sensing a negotiation, I laid out a proposal. I'd stay for another month to finish my projects and train my replacement, then continue on a part-time basis as needed, charging on a project-by-project basis. I deliberately mentioned the possibility of quitting so he'd feel like he was getting the upper hand. Despite the leverage I held, he agreed. Not only did I avoid termination, but I turned the company into a paying client. Over the following month, I maintained a loose schedule while training the new hire. Afterwards, they contacted me regularly for remote work, paying triple my former salary without the toxic environment. When my client base grew enough, I left the firm for good. Even 5 years later, the former CEO still reaches out for advice, which I typically decline, saying I'm too busy. Though some doubt this story, I stand by every detail. Small office, multitasking roles, occasional axe approaches to security, and the eventual entrepreneurial leap. A couple of months into my changing work routine, I was surprised to find that despite my repeated tardiness, lackluster office presence, and focus on my own consulting business while at the company, I hadn't been fired yet. It felt inevitable, but curiosity got the better of me, so I decided to investigate. Since I was in charge of tech support, I had access to the company's email servers. Logging into the CEO's personal email, I searched for mentions of my name and discovered a recent email thread between the CEO, my direct superior, and other team members. The subject line centered around my performance, and the final message made it clear. If there were no objections, I was to be terminated in just 2 days. Rather than becoming discouraged, I resolved not to let them fire me. I didn't want a termination stain in my work history, and I wanted to maintain my income a bit longer while my consulting business grew. Without revealing my knowledge of their plan, I crafted a strategy to turn the situation to my advantage. The very next day, 1 day before the planned firing, I asked for a meeting with the CEO to discuss my performance. When he asked what I wanted to speak about, I told him honestly that I was aware my recent work had been subpar and that I had a feeling they intended to let me go soon. The look of surprise on his face was unforgettable, as if I had somehow read his mind. I admitted that my heart wasn't in the corporate job anymore and that I consider myself an entrepreneur at heart, something he might relate to. I reminded him of all the critical tasks and projects I handled, making it clear that I was indispensable. Then, I proposed a compromise. Instead of firing me, allow me to continue working for a month to complete ongoing projects and train my replacement. Afterward, I would scale back to working remotely on a part-time, project-by-project basis, charging accordingly. I intentionally hinted at resignation, giving him the feeling that he had won the negotiation, even though the reality was that I held significant leverage. After a pause, he agreed. Not only did I avoid being fired, but I also converted the company into a paying client for my consulting business. During that month, I continued doing as I pleased, knowing the end was near while fulfilling my commitment to train my replacement. Once the month ended, the company regularly contacted me for remote tasks, and I charged them triple my previous salary. Eventually, as my own business flourished, I completely severed ties, though the CEO still periodically calls for advice. Now, I just brush him off, saying I'm too busy. My son was born prematurely at 28 weeks, and he survived only 11 days. He clung to life in a tiny incubator of the NICU, surrounded by machines and tubes, with nurses doing their best to comfort him when I couldn't. I witnessed his tiny chest struggle as it rose and fell, and saw his little fingers flex and curl, as if he were trying to hold on to something invisible. I was there every single day, every hour I was permitted. When he passed away, a part of me went with him. Yet what breaks me most isn't just losing my son. It's the complicated truth that part of me also feels relief. Not because I didn't want him. I wanted him more than anything and still do. But because I take solace in knowing he'll never have to endure life with a man who was supposed to be his father. My pregnancy was nothing short of hell from almost the very start. I discovered I was pregnant at about 9 weeks, right after he got engaged. I thought I was beginning a new chapter with someone who, despite being complicated and intense, truly loved me. But everything began to unravel from that point. By 10 weeks, I uncovered a terrifying secret. The man I was to marry had committed murder. It wasn't revealed directly at first, but seeped out slowly, corroding everything beneath the surface. His paranoia grew. He panicked at the sight of unfamiliar cars outside our home. He rarely spoke of his past, and I naively assumed he was simply seeking a fresh start. One drunken night, He confessed everything. He admitted to killing someone in cold blood in a city over 2 hours away. He showed me newspaper articles, mugshots, police reports, and spoke of a friend who was imprisoned, taking the fall for him. They communicated on Facebook regularly. This friend was paying the price for his crime. I was frozen with fear and confusion, carrying his child. I felt the world collapse beneath me. Memories flooded back. A family weekend at his aunt's farm where he disappeared to bury the murder weapon while I sat in that house, laughing and playing games, unaware of its grim secret. Violence quickly followed the revelations. Perhaps it existed before, but once I knew the truth, his cruelty intensified. He became terrifying, shoving, slapping, screaming, chasing me around our apartment, shaking me until I struggled to breathe. I spent most of my pregnancy in tears, not apologizing to him, but quietly begging forgiveness for my unborn child. I whispered sorrows for the fear he must sense, for being brought into a world shadowed by such a father. At 17 weeks, my water broke. Rushed to the hospital. Doctors were grimly honest. Survival was unlikely, but somehow my son's spirit held on. Week after week, I stayed hospitalized, connected to machines, staring at the ceiling, feeling as though I was letting this fragile life down. He reached 28 weeks, a miracle in itself. His birth was as fragile as his existence. He came out tiny and weak, unable to cry, whisked away before I could hold him. For 11 days, I lived in a NICU, barely eating or sleeping, singing lullabies through tears, watching the monitors for any sign that he might stay. Meanwhile, his father continued his torment. He stormed the hospital, attempting to barge into my room until nurses repeatedly removed him. The day before doctors told me my son wouldn't survive, that man cursed him to death right beside me. He stared in my eyes and said he hoped our baby didn't make it, and he didn't. There are no words that capture the silence left by a life that barely had a chance to breathe. Still, deep inside, a quiet relief lingers. My son was spared from suffering. That man was spared the title of father. He has taken 2 sons from 2 different mothers, one through murder, one through trauma. When I imagine what life might have been if my son survived, terror floods me. I'd be tethered forever to a man capable of such darkness. Custody battles, an ever-present threat of violence, forcing my child to visit a father who whispered hatred in a hospital room, who buried a murder weapon beneath the soil where we once smiled. I love my son with every fiber of my being, but in this twisted, agonizing way, I believe this was mercy. There is no justice. The man remains free, his friends still behind bars, and my son is gone. I'm left with the memory of tiny hands, the steady beeping of machines in the dark, and the faintest breath that ceased too soon. If I could say just one thing to my son, it would be this: I'm so deeply sorry. You deserved so much more. I should have been stronger, seen it sooner, gotten you away from him. But I loved you then, and I love you now. And, despite the pain, I hope you never felt the fear I felt. I hope your short time here was peaceful, that the quiet voices of nurses made you feel safe. I think of you every day, and how I long to hold you once more. Just you and me, away from the noise, free from the machines. My little boy, know you're loved beyond words. Know I tried. Know that I'm sorry. My pregnancy quickly spiraled into a nightmare as I uncovered a sinister truth about my fiancé. At just 10 weeks along, I discovered that the man I was about to marry had committed murder. This revelation didn't come from a direct admission at first. Instead, it unraveled slowly, like a decay hidden beneath the surface. His paranoia became apparent. He panicked at the sight of unfamiliar cars near our apartment and was strangely reluctant to share details about his life before moving to my city. I once believed he sought a fresh start in a new place for a new job, but the reality was far darker. He had fled to escape the consequences of his actions. One night, after drinking heavily and breaking down in tears, He confessed everything. He admitted coldly that he had taken a life in a city 2.5 hours away. More shocking still, he told me that his friend had taken a fall for the crime and was currently imprisoned. He showed me online articles, police reports, mug shots, and even our ongoing communications on Facebook, and a stark contrast weighed heavily on me. The man whose name was on the prison papers was living behind bars in my fiancé's place. Reflecting on a weekend we had spent at his aunt's farm, I suddenly saw it through a new, chilling lens. During that trip, he disappeared to the back of the property and returned visibly upset. At the time, I never questioned it, but now he revealed that it was where he had buried the murder weapon. I had been there, eating, laughing, and playing games, in the same home that concealed the grim evidence of his crime. After this revelation, his behavior turned violent. Perhaps the cruelty had always been there, camouflaged until fear and necessity made it burst forth. He needed to keep me afraid, to ensure I wouldn't contact the authorities. The abuse escalated. He shoved me, slapped me, screamed, chased me through our apartment, pinned me against walls, and shook me until I struggled to breathe. Most of my pregnancy was spent in tears, apologizing, not to him, but to my unborn child. Lying in bed with a hand over my belly, I whispered sorry after sorry to my baby for the fear that surrounded us, for my weakness, and for bringing him into such a dark, dangerous world. This secret shattered not only my sense of safety, but the very foundation of our lives, casting a long, painful shadow over the months to come. My son was born prematurely at just 28 weeks, and, against all odds, he survived for 11 days. In the neonatal intensive care unit, he remained fragile, encased in a small incubator hooked to machines and tubes, as devoted nurses did their best to soothe him in ways only they could when I was unable. Each breath he took was a battle, and I witnessed the subtle movements of his tiny fingers, curled as though grasping for something beyond reach. I was by his side every moment I was permitted, cherishing those fleeting hours. When he passed away, a part of me went silent along with him. Yet, what pierces my heart most deeply is not only the profound loss itself, but the complicated relief I feel. It's not because I didn't want him. I long for him with every fiber of my being, then and still do now, but relief that he will never have to endure life with a man who would have been his father lingers in the shadows. My pregnancy was a torment from the outset. Shortly after discovering I was pregnant, I learned staggering truths about my fiancé, that he had committed murder and hidden it from me, that his past bore dark secrets he desperately tried to keep buried. Violence soon became entwined in our lives. His cruelty grew after I realized the full extent of his past. He frightened me, threatened me, and trapped me in fear. I spent countless hours apologizing, not to him, but to the child I carried, whispering sorries for the terror surrounding his beginning and for not being stronger, for not escaping sooner. Then, at 17 weeks, my water broke. The doctors were grim and told me survival was unlikely, yet my son clung on, defying the odds until his birth at 28 weeks. He arrived so fragile, so tiny that he couldn't even cry, and was whisked away before I could hold him. Those 11 days in the NICU blurred into a haze of sleepless vigil, lullabies sung through tears and unrelenting hope. Meanwhile, his father's hatred followed me even there, as he screamed and cursed, wishing death upon our son mere hours before the doctors confirmed the end was near. Losing my child this way is beyond words. The silence left behind, the absence of a life never fully lived, is unbearable. Yet beneath that sorrow is a bittersweet truth. I am grateful he never had to suffer the horrors of the world his father would have inflicted. That man has stolen 2 sons from 2 different women, both in tragic ways. One by violence, one through anguish. When I envision what the future might have held if my son had survived, fear overwhelms me. Custody battles, the shadow of violence, the torment he would have known. I love my son with every part of me. Yet my heart whispers that perhaps, in its own terrible mercy, this loss spared him from a life of pain. There is no justice. His father remains free, his mother left only with memories of tiny hands, machine beeps in the quiet of night, and the softest breath that was silenced far too soon. If I could speak to my son, I would say, "I'm so sorry. You deserved so much better. I should have been stronger, seen the truth sooner, protected you from harm. But I loved you then, and I love you still. And I pray your brief existence was peaceful, that in those final moments, the nurses' gentle voices made you feel safe. My little boy, know that you are forever cherished. I try with all my heart, and I will never stop loving you. Our family has been plunged into despair after the tragic ordeal our eldest daughter endured. When she was just 14, her world was shattered, and ours with it. No matter how much love and care we poured into raising her, something horrific happened that we couldn't prevent. Though the man responsible was eventually imprisoned, the damage to our daughter was irreversible. Counseling failed to restore her former spirit, leaving her emotionally withdrawn and distant. She became an island unto herself, refusing to talk or connect with anyone. We felt overwhelmed by guilt, blaming ourselves for what had happened. To shield her from further harm, we made the difficult decision to withdraw her from school and begin homeschooling. She was plagued by frequent night terrors, and school was no longer a safe place for her. Our protective instincts, perhaps excessive, drove us to create a more controlled environment for her fragile state. The situation worsened when we discovered that our daughter was pregnant, carrying the child of her attacker. We suggested termination, given her youth and circumstances, but she firmly declined. We agreed to respect her choice and kept her out of school so she could carry the pregnancy to term. We promised her that we would raise the baby as her sibling, helping preserve a semblance of normalcy in her teenage life. Though imperfect, this arrangement offered some comfort to all of us. For a while, this fragile balance held. Our daughter was able to visit her child whenever she wished, which we saw as preferable to adoption, but her mental health continued to decline openly. Suicidal thoughts grew darker, and her attempts at despair led to repeated hospitalizations. Eventually, the unthinkable happened. She succeeded in taking her own life, and the devastation that followed was overwhelming. Initially, we harbored feelings of anger and blame toward the baby, an irrational response fueled by denial and grief. Slowly, we recognized that this innocent child was not to blame. Our focus had been on the baby's paternal lineage and the association with the attacker, overshadowing the more profound truth. She was also the daughter of our beloved child. Our daughter. Coming to terms with this was agonizing, but it shifted our perspective. We resolved to provide the baby with the best life possible, honoring our daughter's memory. We showered her with love, gave her every opportunity, from concerts and holidays to private schooling, in hopes that she would grow up to live a fulfilled life that her mother never had the chance to experience. Now, as her grandparents, we live with the weight of keeping a secret. She has never been told that we are not her biological parents, nor that her mother was our daughter. Though she hasn't questioned it, the truth remains concealed, meant to protect her from pain we fear she might not endure. Every time she embraces us and says, "I love you, Mom or Dad," it stabs at our hearts, a bittersweet reminder of the tragedy that shadows her life. Neither of us can bear the thought of her suffering from this truth, or worse, repeating our daughter's fate. This web of secrecy and sorrow isolates us. Even our own parents remain unaware. My wife and I may be the only ones who truly understand the depths of this burden. This agony is soul-crushing, the ripple effect of one nightmare, devastating an entire family. The weight of protecting her from the truth feels both necessary and terribly selfish. But it's all we can do to hold together the fragments of our shattered lives. Our parents have been grappling with a painful reality. Their granddaughter grows up completely unaware of her true origins. They live with the heavy burden of this deception, knowing they have deliberately kept her in the dark about the fact that she is, in fact, their granddaughter, not their daughter. The weight of their choices lingers every day as they try to shield her from the turmoil that shadowed her birth family. Despite their efforts to create a loving and supportive environment, the moral conflict gnaws at them. They question the righteousness of withholding the truth, wondering if their protection is merely postponing inevitable pain. Their granddaughter's innocent affection, calling them mom and dad, cuts deep, reminding them of the fragile balance between love and deceit. The fear that revealing the truth might shatter her fragile sense of security keeps them silent. They worry she may not be strong enough to face the reality of her past. The possibility of losing her, as they once lost their daughter, is a terror they cannot bear. Thus, they persevere in their quiet struggle, striving to give her the best life imaginable, while silently shouldering a family secret that binds them all in sorrow. The intertwined journeys shared here highlight the profound impact trauma can have on individuals and families, shaping their emotions, decisions, and paths forward. Through stories of toxic work environments, personal betrayals, devastating losses, and complex family dynamics, we see the fragile balance between pain and resilience. Each narrative reflects the deep complexities of love, protection, and survival, reminding us of the enduring struggle to protect those we cherish in the face of unimaginable hardship. Life changes and loss, a journey through trauma and transformation. This story unfolds from the crossroads of personal growth, difficult relationships, and deep loss, revealing the intricate nature of human emotions and our capacity for resilience. The corporate struggle. A few years after college, I found myself working as an analyst at a small private equity firm. The CEO was one of the most ruthless men I've ever encountered. Still relatively young, but a multi-millionaire driven solely by greed and devoid of any business ethics. He crushed anyone who got in his way, whether contractors, employees, or even longtime family friends, without a shred of remorse. Because the company was so small, just around 20 people in the office and several more remote, I wore many hats. Besides my analyst duties, I became the unofficial tech person, despite lacking formal qualifications. Whether it was setting up servers, fixing laptops, or answering, "How do I convert this to PDF?" questions, I was the go-to millennial office tech guy. I mostly learned by Googling everything on the spot, but over time, I genuinely honed my tech skills. They entrusted me with bigger responsibilities, like planning and supervising the installation of computer systems within their businesses, though I received no extra pay. After a couple of years, I was exhausted, stuck with no real career progression, enduring long 12 to 14-hour days without overtime or bonuses. The toxic environment, led by what I called Captain Douchebag, who treated everyone terribly, drained me. I hated the cubicle life and despised being the tech guy who was glued to a desk, so I decided to break free. Rather than resign outright, I launched my own consulting business to build clients on the side while still earning a steady paycheck. As my side business grew, I quietly began dedicating more of my office time to it. In a tiny company where I was the only one with key skills, I manipulated my workload and spun tales about long projects that I actually completed quickly. Before long, I was spending 80% of my day on my business, taking client calls right at my desk, and mostly killing time on Reddit during the rest. My late arrivals became longer and longer, from half an hour up to hours past the start time. When my boss didn't push back, I exploited that leniency fully, coming in around noon, working a few hours, then heading home early. My coworkers complained quietly since they despise the company too, and I helped them surf their tech problems. navigating work politics. One day, sensing my inevitable firing was near, I accessed the CEO's email account. He had given me the password to assist with Outlook setup and discovered an email thread discussing terminating me within days. Instead of surrendering, I crafted a bold plan. I scheduled a meeting with the CEO to discuss performance and, with unwavering honesty, told him I suspected they were about to fire me, despite my fading commitment to the job. His stunned reaction was priceless. I confessed my entrepreneurial spirit and my desire to start my own company, but acknowledged the responsibilities no one else could handle at the firm. Then, I proposed a deal. Instead of firing me, allow me to stay for a month to finish projects and train my replacement. After that, I'd work remotely on a project-by-project basis, charging triple what I earned as a full-time employee. I framed it so he'd feel like he won the negotiation, though I clearly held the upper hand. After a pause, he agreed. That month, I continued to operate with near full independence, training my replacement as promised. Once it was over, the company regularly hired me remotely, paying well while keeping me at arm's length from the CEO. Eventually, when my client base was sufficient, I left the company entirely. Even now, years later, the CEO calls me seeking advice. I simply say I'm too busy. Personal turmoil, a journey through loss. My son was born prematurely at 28 weeks and lived only 11 days in the NICU. Those fragile days define me. I witnessed his struggle to breathe, his tiny fingers grasping at nothing, and fought alongside him with every shred of hope I had. But loss cut deep. I loved him fiercely and wanted him desperately. Yet beneath the heartbreak, a small part of me felt relief. Relief he would never have to endure life with his father, a man capable of violence and cruelty, life-altering secrets. Early in my pregnancy, at just 10 weeks, the terrifying truth emerged. My fiancé had committed murder. He was hiding a dark past I never imagined. He revealed to me a chilling story about his friend taking the fall in prison for that crime. Shockingly, during a family trip, the murder weapon had been buried right under our roof, a secret I discovered only too late. His behavior darkened, violence colored our days. I was trapped in fear, enduring physical abuse while whispering apologies to my unborn son for not protecting him, for bringing him into a world dominated by brutality. The aftermath of loss. When my water broke early, doctors warned survival was bleak, yet he fought with miraculous strength inside me. His birth was a fragile whisper, unable to cry, whisked away immediately. 11 days in the NICU felt endless, my heart tethered to beeping machines and fading hope. His father's torment didn't end, shouting curses at the hospital, wishing death upon our child in front of me. And when my son passed, though words failed to capture the void, I knew deep down that perhaps it was mercy. He never had to face the terror of a father like that, the ripple effect of family's descent. Our family has faced tragedy beyond comprehension. Our daughter, at 14, endured a horrific assault that shattered her world. Despite counseling and our best efforts, she withdrew in his silence, depression drowning her light. To protect her, we homeschooled her, hoping to shield her from further harm. But then we learned she was pregnant by her attacker. She refused termination, so we supported her choice, raising the baby as her sibling, trying to preserve what normalcy we could. Unraveled truths. Her mental health deteriorated, and with repeated suicide attempts, she eventually succumbed to despair. This loss devastated us. Initially, we misplaced our anger on our child, but soon realized the baby, our granddaughter, deserved love and protection. We showered her with all we had: gifts, experiences, education, yet she lives unaware of her true origins. We fear the truth might shatter her fragile world, so we keep the secret that her mother was my daughter. It is a lie born out of love and fear, and this burden feels unbearable. Conclusion: The intertwined journeys I have shared reveal the heavy imprint trauma leaves on lives shaped by love, loss, and a complex attempts to protect those we cherish. These stories confront the painful reality of suffering, yet also the enduring strength people find to navigate an unforgiving world. If this story moved you, please consider supporting by subscribing, liking, commenting, or sharing. Your engagement helps bring these voices to light.